Serbia is not a large power. It does not lead Europe. It does not control global markets. It does not sit inside the European Union. But Serbia does something different. It refuses to choose sides. Centuries before modern borders, the land that is now Serbia was a frontier, caught between the Ottoman Empire to the south and the Habsburg monarchy to the north. Old maps from the 17th century trace the jagged lines of this contested ground, where fortresses rose and fell, and towns changed hands as empires advanced or retreated. Life along these shifting borders demanded resilience. Communities learned to adapt, to bargain, and to guard a sense of identity that was neither fully East nor fully West. After the World Wars, Josip Broz Tito took this inherited caution and gave it a new shape. In 1961, he welcomed dozens of leaders from Africa, Asia, and Latin America to Belgrade for the first non-aligned movement summit. Tito's vision was clear. Yugoslavia would not be a pawn for Moscow or Washington. Instead, it would chart its own course, drawing on a tradition of navigating between powerful neighbors. The image of Tito standing among leaders from every continent still resonates in Serbian memory, a reminder that independence is not just a policy, but a habit shaped by centuries at the crossroads. Night after night in the spring of 1999, the sky over Belgrade flickered with explosions. Air raid sirens wailed through empty streets as families huddled in basements, listening for the distant thud of bombs. The NATO air campaign struck power plants, bridges, and the state television headquarters. In the darkness, the city's rhythm broke. No trains, no broadcasts, just the crackle of emergency radios and the hum of generators. Civilian casualties mounted. The United Nations later counted hundreds dead, thousands injured, and whole neighborhoods reduced to rubble. Long after the bombing stopped, the memory lingered. For many, the lesson was simple. When outsiders intervene, sovereignty is shattered, and ordinary lives pay the price. The trauma of 1999 did not remain just a private sorrow or a chapter in history books. Over time, it was distilled into a guiding principle for statecraft. Serbian officials and diplomats began to speak of mnemonic diplomacy, a phrase scholars use to describe the deliberate use of collective memory in foreign policy. In parliamentary debates and presidential addresses, phrases like sovereignty, territorial integrity, and national interest became institutional mantras. Laws were passed to protect the memory of the NATO bombing, and annual commemorations turned history into a living argument. Through these channels, memory hardened into doctrine, shaping a mindset where every alliance, treaty, or negotiation is filtered through the lens of sovereignty first. In Serbia's official rhetoric, the past is not simply remembered, it is operationalized, setting the boundaries for what the state will accept from the outside world. Serbia faces a crowded table of demands from every direction. Brussels lays out a roadmap with visa liberalization achieved, but progress now tied to strict benchmarks on rule of law, media freedom, and, above all, normalization with Kosovo. Each step forward comes with new conditions, and every delay brings reminders from EU officials that the door will not stay open forever. Meanwhile, Moscow and Beijing offer alternatives. Russia courts Belgrade with energy deals and diplomatic support, while China brings infrastructure financing and promises of partnership without lectures. Serbian diplomats, caught between these competing offers, repeat a familiar message in international forums. Cooperation, yes, but never at the expense of sovereignty. Every negotiation becomes a test of how much autonomy can be preserved under the weight of competing expectations. The Danube carves a path through Serbia, connecting the Black Sea to the heart of Central Europe. Along its banks, barges carry grain, metals, and containers past old fortress walls and new industrial terminals. Infrastructure planners map out each stretch of river and rail, knowing that these routes are more than lines on a map, they are Serbia's leverage. Control of the upper Danube gives Belgrade a say in the flow of goods between east and west. Over the last 2 years, World Bank data shows cargo volumes on Serbia's Danube segment rising by 12%. Planners point to the 10T corridors, vital arteries that cross Serbian territory, as proof that geography is not just a backdrop, but a bargaining chip. Each shipment that passes through strengthens Serbia's hand at the negotiating table, turning location into quiet influence. Foreign investment in Serbia comes from every direction, but no single partner dominates. European Union investors account for about 45% of foreign direct investment, with Russian capital close behind at 20% and Chinese state-backed loans making up another quarter. This blend gives Belgrade room to maneuver, and economic advisors often point to these figures as proof that Serbia can avoid over-reliance on any one camp. Yet that same diversity brings hidden risks. Energy dependence is the clearest example. In 2021, Serbia signed a contract with Gazprom for up to 2.2 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year. The deal includes a force majeure clause, allowing supplies to be suspended if sanctions or political crises intervene. For every new investor or infrastructure project, there is a parallel vulnerability. Each contract, each pipeline, each loan is another thread in a web that both supports and constrains Serbia's independence. Behind the closed doors of the presidency, tension ran high as the clock counted down. For 48 hours, President Vučić and his closest advisors weighed the EU demand for sanctions against Russia. Some in the room urged alignment with Brussels, warning of isolation and stalled accession talks. Others pointed to the gas contract with Gazprom, the weight of past alliances, and the memory of outside pressure. A draft statement was written, then rewritten, each word measured. On national television, the president announced Serbia's refusal to impose sanctions, citing the need to protect national interests and preserve autonomy. The choice was made in public, but the debate left its mark on every official present. Inside Parliament, arguments grow sharper as nationalist parties gain ground. Lawmakers warn that any hint of compromise on Kosovo or foreign policy could trigger a backlash at home. Watchdog groups and opposition members of parliament call out the government's handling of Chinese infrastructure loans, pointing to opaque terms and a lack of public audits. The EU pre-audit reports raise flags about the Belgrade to Budapest rail project, suggesting that hidden clauses and revenue-sharing formulas might expose Serbia to penalties or funding freezes. Meanwhile, the country's reliance on Russian gas leaves it exposed, and any disruption could threaten heating, industry, and public trust. Each of these pressures, public sentiment, fiscal risk, and energy insecurity, narrows the room for maneuver. The balancing act grows more precarious as every decision risks tipping the scales, not just abroad, but on the streets of Belgrade. Three futures stand before Serbia, each shaped by the choices of its leaders, the weight of its past, and the pressures of its geography. In one scenario, the country completes reforms demanded by Brussels, strengthening the rule of law, opening its economy, and gradually resolving the Kosovo dispute. The signals are clear: fewer Chinese loans, more infrastructure funded by the EU, and steady progress through accession chapters. Serbia becomes a full EU member by the early 2030s. Russian influence fades, energy supplies diversify, and the country's laws and markets align with the European mainstream. A second path draws Serbia deeper into the orbit of Moscow and Beijing. Indicators include new security agreements with Russia, expanded Chinese financing for railways and highways, and persistent gridlock in EU negotiations. Economic and diplomatic ties to the West stall. Serbia emerges as a logistics hub for Eurasian trade, its fortunes tied to energy deals and infrastructure partnerships beyond the EU's reach. The third future is the most familiar, a tactical balance, neither fully committed to Brussels nor to the East. Serbia splits its votes at the United Nations, signs deals with both camps, and keeps its options open. The loan portfolio remains mixed, diplomatic language is cautious, and domestic debate is polarized. Flexibility and autonomy come with risks: political backlash, economic shocks, and growing external pressure never fully disappear. Each path is visible in the decisions made today. The direction Serbia chooses will shape not only its own future, but the balance of power in the region for years to come. Serbia stands at a crossroads, its autonomy under pressure from every direction. In a world demanding allegiance, the cost of neutrality rises. The future will test how long balance can hold. Subscribe for more strategic insights.